And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Jessica Taylor, intuitive channel, energy translator, and spiritual guide dedicated to helping others reconnect with their multidimensional essence. Jessica, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Well, Jessica, how did you get into all this stuff?
The journey goes back a long way. As a child, I used to have a lot of paranormal experiences, and houses that we would live in, there'd be different kinds of phenomena. A couple of times I heard disincarnate voices, and that was something that was ongoing throughout my childhood and teens. And then when I was kind of in my mid-20s, I started doing psychic development work. I'm part of a mediumship circle. And so that was where I really started to learn how to harness the energy, how to translate really the messages that were coming through, because quite often when spirit gives you messages, it's very symbolic. Sometimes it's literal, or you hear talking very clearly, but not always. And so part of that is that kind of decoding. And so I learned that I could work through with mediumship whilst I was doing that. And that really, you get a lot of confirmation when you do mediumship, because you're able to tell the person that you're working with, you know, things about their life or their home, or the person that's passed over that's trying to communicate with them, things that they can confirm, and they know that you wouldn't have been able to know that. So that helped me to put me in a state of trust, so that I could start working with this energy. And then as time went on, I started to learn how to work with my own vibration, how to start to lift that, and how to tune it into different frequencies. And I did a lot of work through the heart chakra there as well. And through that process, I started to, it not only opened me up spiritually, it also started to align everything in my life that I wanted to experience. So I felt that's kind of synchronicity. And because I was in what I would say is a high vibration, that was when I started to, through meditations, initially get connections through from the Pleiadians, as well as some other different beings as well that would come through that were very high vibrational. And initially the messages and information that I received from them were through meditation, and that progressed. And they kind of asked my consent whether they could speak through me, whether I would be prepared to be a direct voice channel. And I'd said yes to that. And then it was just a matter of maybe like another few months later. And I was just doing some work one day, and I was doing a guided meditation for social media. And that's when it started. And it just came on. I could feel a massive shift in the energy, felt the whole movement of my body as it kind of stepped aside. It was very intense the first few times it happened. And that was how that journey then kind of went forward.
Since it started for you at such a young age, do you think you were just born that way, or was there a traumatic event that happened that put it all in motion?
No, I didn't have any trauma, but there were a couple of things that were interesting that I don't know. I mean, the Pleiadians have always explained it to me that the reason I am able to communicate with the particular being that I channel, and he channels like the collective consciousness of that frequency, but is because at soul level we're kind of connected. And they put it to me that any beings that are channeled, the channeler, as long as it's in high frequency, usually is connected at soul level at some point with them. And it's like there's already been an agreement that at some point in that person's life, they're going to bring through information and start working together. But there were a couple of small things that happened. So one was when I was about 18 months or 2 years old. This is a story that my mum told me. I must have woken up in the night. So she came downstairs to get me a bottle, and she looked out the window, and suddenly this bright circular light just shone in the center of the garden. There was no sound, so she didn't, assume it was a helicopter light or something, and it was just in our garden, just in the center taking up that space. And she said it was such an anomaly, and she could feel that it was so unusual that she didn't dare look out the window. It frightened her. She backed away. So there was that event, which we've always kind of wondered what was that? Was that, as I've got older, I thought, is that something that was making some kind of connection? But then also when I was about 7 years old, we were driving, I lived in the southeast at the time, and we'd been on holiday in Cornwall, and we were driving past Stonehenge. And as we went past Stonehenge to the fields on the right, we started to see all these cars start to pull over. And we didn't actually stop, but we looked over, and Mum said, "Oh, it's a crop circle." It has just appeared. So that was curious. But then years and years later, in my mid-20s, when I was kind of going through awakening anyway, I looked this up, and there was only this. So this crop circle appeared in broad daylight. It appeared at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but this was in July, so it was British summertime. So we had the light till 9 or 10 o'clock. Then it appeared. So that specific time, and also it was the only circle, because they were all very recorded, especially the really big ones, which this was. It was the only one within about a decade to appear in the fields opposite Stonehenge. So it was really a specific, remarkable set, and it's called the Julia set. So anyone that's into crop circles, if you type in Julia set, you'll see the picture, and most people will recognize it. They'll have seen it before. So it was one of the most massive, recorded. Loads of people went in and did testing on the energy of the soil and the structure of it and everything that had happened, as it was laying there. And it's always made me wonder. We were going past, the time of day that we were going past was as this had just appeared, and we knew it had just appeared because the cars had only just started to pull up, and this became one of the most famous circles that there has ever been. And I think to be just in that proximity of a frequency that's creating that in the middle of broad daylight, a plane had gone over half an hour before. It was a recreational flight, came back half an hour later, and it had appeared in that time. So what does that do, to us, to be in that kind of approximation to something, not only the effects of going into that afterwards, but in the moment where it's actually appearing and right next to the road, right next to the car that we were in. So I don't put those events down to why I channeled, but it certainly opened up a lot of curiosity about who we were sharing the universe with, who we were sharing the cosmos with, and certainly at least opened my mind greatly to the knowledge rather than idea, really, that there is a lot more than we are presented with in our kind of conventional, more matrix-like reality.
You mentioned there was an agreement made with the Pleiadians. Did you make it pre-birth?
So the agreement that I made when I was doing meditations, that was kind of, they asked me then whether I would be okay to be prepared to channel. In terms of the soul contract stuff, yeah, that agreement would have been. So this is where we kind of go into the nature of how they've described the incarnation process to me, and it's not in the kind of linear way that we perceive things, because our perception of linear time is necessary to anchor us into the human experience. But my understanding of it really is that it's like there's an explosion of energy that comes from the kind of highest state of consciousness, and that disperses through the different layers of frequency, and each layer of frequency has multiple dimensions. So you would have some incarnations that will fall into a very Earth-like, a very human experience, maybe in the Dark Ages on planet Earth, but you'll also have part of your energy that has incarnated into the seventh dimension Pleiades, in my case. And there is the agreement kind of is not written up in writing before you incarnate, but there is an energetic bond, an energetic connection. And then we have the conscious choice as to whether we wish to pursue the awakening of our spirituality, to then actually start to work with that connection and use the knowledge that we have and use our ability to start to co-create and understand a reality from a perspective that's outside of our human experience.
The channeling contract was made recently, right? So how did they find you to make this contract?
So I think that the primary being that I channel is called Kistos. In just a by note on that, he said, we wouldn't be able to, we don't even have the vocal cords to produce the sound that would be his name. So they kind of pick names that are in alignment with our soul group and with what our consciousness can assimilate. But so Kistos is basically just another spark of my own soul's energy. So that it's not necessarily that he found me, it's that I adjusted my frequency through my life experiences, my spirituality and my practices enough that he was able to make that communication with me. So it's almost like they wait until you're able to hold that within your body, hold that within your energy, and then will ask you whether you are prepared to kind of work with them in that way that you can speak and start to bring information through. So we've always been connected. And if you didn't, for example, ever kind of move into that frequency or start making those connections, they would still give you guidance, but quite often we would see that as being spirit guides who are angels or something. And that's not saying there's not angels, but that's often how, because of the stories that we've been taught as humans, that's how our understanding will start to develop around the idea that something has come in to kind of give us some guidance or something. And then, so some people will go forward and use that to make an impact on the world in some other kind of way. Some people will use it to channel. We all have different options once we kind of come online as such, as to how we then choose to use our ability and our connection with others.
The way I interpreted what you said is that you are Kistos in another dimension. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a roundabout way, but there'd be also like thousands of other aspects of that energy that came out of that sort of initial burst of consciousness, and some of them will be unpleasant ones. So some of the part of that consciousness is going to be in low frequencies and low vibration, looking to move into higher frequencies and higher vibration. Some will be in parts that I've never yet connected with at a very high frequency, but maybe my soul's not ready to, like my person, my human being is not ready to kind of work with that yet. And that's the understanding that they've given me generally of the incarnation process for everybody, that we have all these multiple kind of beings and parts of our energy that have an experience all in one time for the purpose of the expansion of the consciousness. And we all work together throughout those multiple lives and multiple dimensions in order to have the experiences that we have, so that we can expand consciousness. Because when consciousness expands on an individual level, it sends out a vibration that then affects the collective level, and then that affects like the universe. So essentially we are the divine spark, we are the energy that created us, and the process of learning how to remember and reconnect with that brings further knowledge and brings further expansion to that point of source, to that point from which we created ourselves.
Have you seen a UFO in waking life?
Quite a few times. Not anything like really kind of startlingly close and really clear, but a lot of the time throughout the night sky. And I have this one wonderful friend who's a magnificent psychic. She does more kind of conventional mediumship, but when I've done channeling for her, and she can often see Christos when we work together. And whenever I have done work with her, the moment I go out into the night sky, I start seeing craft kind of moving across, and in really distinctive patterns. You'll see sometimes like a fleet, there'll be several, and they'll move so clearly. So yes.
What about contact with ETs?
I haven't had any kind of abduction experiences or anything like that. So other than like the crop circle and whatever, that kind of connection that came through energy and through the channel and meditation has been interesting. I have seen quite a few different types of ETs through astral travel, and kind of worked a little bit in those realms and those dimensions. the reptilians it can be a triggering kind of subject for some people, because there is this assumption that they're all harmful, and that's not the case at all. It's like humans, there are people on this planet who wish to harm others and wish to have control over others, and there are people within the Draco system that are the same. And I've seen some of the really high frequency ones who are working to raise consciousness within their own star system, and kind of seen some glimpse of the soul contracts that are going with them there, and how to work with that too. And I think there are a lot of people on this planet who are working for different star systems unconsciously through their astral body while they sleep. And a lot of those people don't remember their dreams, because they're kind of taking this more maybe secretive information in order to help on a more galactic scale rather than an individual challenging kind of journey.
What perspective do the Pleiadians give about our ancient past?
About the ancient past?
Mm-hmm. And the ancient past civilizations?
They've said that everything is older than, not than just what we've told, but older than some of the kind of guesswork has been around it. They've said that there have been tens of thousands of previous civilizations, and that was quite surprising when that one came through, because we think of maybe Atlantis and Lemuria as previous civilizations that have fallen, and they that's just the one that is the most recent to us and the most intrinsically linked with our karma on the planet at the moment, which is why so many people are having memories of it. But they've said that there's been tens of thousands of civilizations, and actually shortly after that was channeled, within a couple of weeks, I saw that this skull had just been discovered, and it was a human skull, as in the skull of a modern human, not a Neanderthal, not a kind of variation of that, that was estimated to be 1 million years old. So if that skull has been found that is 1 million years old, then yes, it's plausible that there can be, tens of thousands of other civilizations previous to the ones that we kind of remember in the ancient past. So yeah, everything is dated a lot further back from the Pleiadian perspective. They said that the ancient Egyptian pyramids were 75,000 years old in our perceived linear time, and that a lot of their construction was related to the fact that Atlantis in particular at this time was starting to lose its high vibration and starting to fall into a lower vibration. And so they were constructed because they generate so much energy, and you could kind of program it with a higher frequency consciousness through sound, and permeate that through such large areas that would create so much resonance. So it was able to kind of stop. It didn't stop the fall, but it stopped it from dipping as badly as it could have done, and it kind of minimized the harm, but also allowed the consciousness from that time to almost be harnessed, because they're starting to realize now that underneath the pyramids there is water, and that would have connected to the Nile, and back in that time the Nile was a lot closer. So the kind of consciousness would be programmed into the water, which would then, of course, be across the planet. And through water, we're actually able to obtain quite a lot of information. It's like a way of kind of crystallizing or harnessing consciousness. So it was almost like a way of preserving it, so that in the future, civilizations would be able to start to tune into it again. And, we've seen the experiments that have been done with crystallization of water when it's been frozen, and that's literally in a figure of speech the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more that we can kind of gain, and when you immerse yourself in water, it's a really good way of opening yourself to higher consciousness. So sometimes if I'm going to do a channeling or something, I'll have a bath first, because being amongst that water helps to open up that connection to universal consciousness.
Has Kistos revealed to you the purpose of Stonehenge?
Yes, a long time ago, and I can't remember much about it. I know it was similar to the pyramids in that he said that there is actually a frequency. If you hit the stones hard, there would be an inaudible to us, that an inaudible sound would come out, but it would be a certain frequency, and that there was something about the way that it was structured in the shape that could have a similar impact to if you played, music in a bowl of water on top of a speaker, and it will create certain kind of coherent ripples. That there was something like that. So it was a similar kind of purpose to the pyramids, but more basic. It didn't have quite such the wide-ranging impact. But that was probably one of the first channelings I did. So that was quite a long time ago, and I should review that actually, because it's been a while since I've familiarized with it. But that was the kind of basic principle.
Are there Pleiadians in orbit around Earth right now?
I think there are some here. And in terms of, I don't think the Pleiadians, most of them are in the kind of frequency and vibration where they need craft. So it's my understanding that a lot of the craft is sometimes like the little worker bees, which are the greys, that both malevolent and benevolent different star systems use greys for different purposes. But generally, the Pleiadians are able to work through consciousness and through the astral body, or what we would perceive the astral body. They're able to move themselves into a much more a refined form, and therefore I don't think it's necessary for them to use craft in that way.
Well, for the ones that are here, what is their agenda, and what are they doing with or for humanity?
The Pleiadians that are here, I don't think they tend to stay that long, because they've always explained it to me that if they hold too dense a body for too long, it makes it hard for them to leave. And they've said that that was where we get some of the ancient mythology stories from, like from ancient Egypt, that these were beings that had come from other star systems, but basically stayed so long and got enjoyment from the experience of having a human body, but it then kind of densified their frequency a little bit, so they weren't able to just pop off in a light body, and they got stuck here. So I think when they do tend to come, it tends to be short, and they're not necessarily clearly recognizable to us. I know there's this idea that they're all the sort of tall whites and Nordic looking beings, but I don't think they stick to just those kind of bodies. It tends to be more diverse than that. And the reason that they will come in a physical form, and they're usually from the 6th, maybe 7th frequency, I think, in order to be able to do that, is because their vibration is able to lift ours, because something that's in a higher vibration will create such a long a resonance so far out that it will lift the frequency of everything that is surrounding it. And also, because their frequency is so high, it's also able to lift the frequency of Earth and bring it into a kind of alignment with the consciousness of the sun. I'm not saying that they all do this individually, but when you have like lots of very high frequency beings in any one space, it's going to affect the nature of everything surrounding it, not just humans, the other aspects to our planet as well. So we start having more consciousness through the rocks, through the trees, through the other aspects that we, can quite often tend to ignore.
Has Christos revealed to you what's coming for humanity in the near future? And if so, how do we prepare for it?
They have talked a lot about the possible split between a 3rd dimension into a 5th dimension. So I think maybe it's pertinent to talk about that part first, because a lot of your listeners may well have heard about the 3D, 5D split. And, people are maybe concerned about, well, what if I don't move into the 5th dimension, or what's it going to be like if it remains in 1? And also the question is whether that split is actually definitely going to occur. And a couple of years back, the Pleiadians seemed to be, although they could see that it had the potential to occur, they were very hopeful that our consciousness would rise so much collectively that the split wouldn't actually happen, and that we would all rise into fifth. We reviewed that quite recently, and they seem to think that there is going to be a split, but it's not going to be that, you know, one dimension is in this kind of hell-torn chaos and fires burning and everything, and one is completely oblivious to that and in very high vibration and everything is rosy. It seems to be that the third dimension will also lift. The experiences that people that remain in the third dimension have are likely to be similar to what we see and experience now. So like the educational systems, there'll still be the kind of same governance and legal systems. There'll still be interaction with AI and, you know, developing pretty much on that trajectory. But a lot of the more malevolent aspects of that construct will have been eradicated. So yes, there might still be government and there will still be corruption, because it's still in that kind of third dimension, but it's not going to be anywhere near the level that it has been. It's like the truth is going to kind of come out more. People are going to like be a little bit more honest and more authentic. And then the fifth dimension is where we really see like the development of consciousness, and then it comes on in leaps and bounds. You know, the technologies used will be for the benevolence of the planet and the benevolence of people, rather than as a way to keep us distracted and not able to tune into higher energies for ourselves. That we'll develop more telepathic capabilities. We will start to see changes in the way that we're able to use sound, water, different modalities that will be able to help the body to sustain for longer and to be slightly finer in form. So we would be able to travel more easily through an astral body and have experiences outside of the human experience, making it easier for us to connect into a higher frequency. And one of the fundamental differences between the two is that when you're in third dimension, quite often you will take your understanding and instruction of the world around you from external sources. So you watch the news, you watch the media, you ask ChatGPT to give you some kind of spiritual information or something, because you're still not able to make such a direct connection to source, not able to kind of remember so much that you come from something bigger, that you come from something more divine. And so you're kind of still having the religious structures and the governmental structures will still uphold in the third, because they are because people are still looking for something else to facilitate things for them. Whereas when the fifth dimension is experienced, you're able to tune directly into source. You remember where you came from, even if you're not always in the highest vibration. You will still predominantly be remembering that you're part of something bigger, that your consciousness creates your reality. So everything that you start to feed into, start to allow yourself to think, you won't even kind of fall into those like monkey mind chatter patterns in fifth, because the awareness is so much greater of how your thoughts are going to create reality, and also that everything that you experience is connected to the collective that you are part of as well. And that doesn't mean that you won't have individual experience, and it doesn't mean that there won't still be culture and different ways of perceiving the planet and the world, because we come to have a human experience. But the way that we will use the planet and the way that we will connect with each other will be very different, and how we are able to create the kind of life that we want to experience is going to be much more empowered than it is in third.
Let's say if tomorrow the split occurs and you and I are going to go into the 5D, will life appear to be same, it just with different abilities, or will we become energetic beings and shed the bodies? How would that play out?
I think it's going to happen more gradually. So people maybe won't be quite so aware of like a sudden kind of change. I feel like it's going to play out that there's a lot of people that are having big awakening experiences at the moment and hearing different frequencies and becoming more telepathic, and it's all kind of starting. It is starting to happen. There's a lot of people moving into fifth. It's just at the moment we tend to have 1 foot in fifth and 1 foot in third, and we kind of hop back and forward between. And the more that we concentrate and focus on our energy on the control structures, the more that anchors us into the third, because that's an aspect of the third dimension. But the perspective that I've been given is it's really only going to be a short few years, like 5 years or less, before the split really happens. And the Pleiadians have said they don't know how it's going to play out. And there is so much interest from the galactic community of planet Earth at the moment, because they've seen different star systems where different planets have been in different frequencies, but they have not seen one planet split into 2 different dimensions before. So they don't know exactly whether we're going to be aware of each other, whether we're still going to be kind of living alongside family members in the same way, or whether it will appear to those in the fifth that people in the third have died, and vice versa. So they are watching this with some kind of level of interest. So I can't give you a kind of definitive answer on that, because it seems to be a peculiarity. And we're talking about that, like the Pleiadians talk about their history in terms of like hundreds of thousands of years. So this is a long time that they've experienced different civilizations and realities, and they've not seen this before, which is why it's such a kind of phenomenal time to be here and experience it.
I'm pretty sure everybody who's watching this video wants to shift into 5D.
Yeah.
What can we do? What activities can we do? Or how can we live our lives to ensure that we will?
I think for me, the best gateway into moving into a higher frequency, and it was how I was able to channel higher frequency, was working a lot with my heart chakra. And it's simplistic, but it's like a portal, and it's a frequency that connects with rather than, so we see it in a linear way, right? We see the body's energy system as going from the root chakra all the way up through into the crown, and the heart's at the middle. But the way that I understand it from the Pleiadian perspective is more like if you took a circle, then the heart is at the center. And so you can dive from any point in the circle through the heart center, and you can then kind of choose which vibration that you go into from there. So when the heart chakra is open, it's like an energetic portal to anything higher, if that's what you choose it to be. So you can quite easily meditate on that space and see that energy opening. And if you see it as physical manifestation with people that have very open heart chakras, the muscles in their back around that same space are softer and more malleable. By really starting to connect with and open up that center, you step into more authenticity. And authenticity really is like the kind of fundamental factor in experiencing the fifth dimension, because in the fifth dimension you're connected to the truth of universal consciousness, and you sort of speak and act more aligned with your own, like with what you understand to be authentic and what you understand to be true. So there is less deception, there's less willing to desire to control when we're working from a frequency that is more controlled by the heart chakra. So don't just see it as an energy center of your body, see it as like your portal into bringing yourself into that frequency, so that you can start to live in more of an alignment with that higher vibration.
Can you channel for us a little bit?
Yes, of course.
Before you do it, are you a trance channeler, or are you consciously aware of what's going on?
I'd say it's semi-trance. So for me, I don't remember that much of it. I'll have little fragments. It's like waking up from a dream, where you might have a few pieces of it, but if someone was able to describe that dream back to you, you'd remember more of it. So it's semi-conscious.
Okay.
So I do have to step aside and let them come through.
All right. Whenever you're ready, take your time.
Okay. They will usually announce when they're here. So Yes, hello. We are very looking forward to having this experience to make this connection with you and share our perspectives on your human experience at such a transformative time. Please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you for joining us. Earlier in the conversation, Jessica spoke about a crop circle. Do the Pleiadians have any involvement with them?
No longer, but in the past, we were much more active, as well as other members of the cosmos, in bringing these through. You see, we use a form of energy that will create a kind of vibration that is able to affect the perceived physical surroundings that you have as humans. And the purpose that we would make these patterns was to help to lift your consciousness, because at the time that a lot of the circles appeared, although they have appeared for many years before, but we were only able to do small increments. If we gave you too much too soon, it would have caused too much chaos, caused awakening to happen before people were ready to accept it within their soul's energy. So it is within the lifetimes of many of you that you started to see a shift where these circles were happening much more regularly. And that was because we were able to start to help you to be triggered into the times that you're going into now. So leading up specifically to the year 2012, the decade or two before that, we were bringing through the most high consciousness patterns that we could to carry the energy through to you, to help you, knowing that you would be going forward into this point of awakening now. Now, one of the interesting things about these circles is that we stopped really having much involvement with them, as well as other members of the cosmos, about 20 years ago. And at that time, the pattern still resumed. And what we noticed was happening was, as the human consciousness was starting to move into a higher frequency, you were creating the patterns yourselves. You did not know you were creating the patterns yourselves. We are not talking about the hoax patterns, but the circles that were measurable differences in the soil and had the peculiarities that you were all so perplexed by, were created by the rise in human consciousness. So you started to reflect the frequencies that you were actually experiencing. So much like when you see the movement of water into coherent patterns, this occurs sometimes if you play a certain pleasant kind of music to the water. This was also happening with the circles, and it was the frequencies being emitted by humans that were altering the energy into these patterns that you perceived in your ground.
When will humanity be ready to join the galactic family and have open contact?
Very soon. We have been waiting for this point, and have mentioned before that we know that it takes a certain level of openness before us or any other members of the cosmos are really able to just plant ourselves in front of you. At the moment, it would still cause a lot of fear. Even if we looked very beautiful and angelic to you, you are not, most of you, quite ready to see something just appear. So we're able to work in more discreet ways, and with the consent of those of you who allow us to communicate. But open contact is looking likely to happen before the year 2030. We anticipate you're going to be ready within the next 18 months to 2 years. The trajectory of that can change slightly. You are all in possession of free will, and collectively your free will often synchronizes. So the more of you that move into higher states of consciousness, that are able to open yourselves up, that are able to work on yourselves, really. You need to work on yourselves, your own initiation, your own frequency, because that will affect the collective faster, enabling us to come through in a more direct way sooner. And there is a lot of momentum behind this movement. We understand that there is also a lot of chaos on your planet, but this chaos comes because it is like a version of collective shadow work. You have many of you that are about to go through awakening experiences. So you might look around as you as someone who is quite connected and spiritual and think that everybody still seems terribly asleep. But when there is a lot of drama and a lot of anguish and a lot of chaos, that is because there are so many who are shifting that baggage. They are letting go of the weight in order that their frequency is able to rise. And this is something that is quite imminent for you to see in a more collective way.
Some people on Earth say that the planet is like a prison of the galaxy. Is there any truth to that?
That's not how we would perceive it. The human experience is incredibly interesting and incredibly wonderful because you have this vessel called a body. You see, your body, of course, as you are likely to be aware, produces emotions, and the emotions are produced because of the hormones predominantly that are triggered through the body, and then you connect with them and you develop feelings and you develop attachments and all sorts of things that are rather peculiar for us to understand. And many of us want to have the experience of this body, but the density would make it harder for us to maintain our frequency and therefore our home environment. So no, we do not see it as a prison. We see it as an opportunity for much more growth of expansion, much more consciousness is able to be developed when you have a human body, because you experience more polarity. You experience very low frequency emotions. You experience very high frequency emotions. What the aspect that will start to change the experience for many of you is when you start to realize that you have more of a control over your consciousness, as in you have more control over how you experience reality. You experience reality according to the ways that you think and feel, the vibrations that you put out to the universe, and you are able to harness that by developing an understanding of that, and so by some level of self-discipline in how you allow yourself to talk to yourself and how you allow yourself to think towards both yourself and others. So that then allows the body to have more joyful feelings more often, and that is how you start to have a little less density and a little bit more lightness. But no, we do not see this as a prison. There is no punishing aspect to the human experience. It is one that probably it feels like such a very long time for so many of you of being caught in what may seem like darkness, but you have come so far so quickly. And there have been times on your planet where you have been in incredibly high frequencies and would never view the human experience as many of you do now. And that is what you are moving back into.
After humans transition into the afterlife, are they forced to return and reincarnate, or can they go on to other places?
The process of dying is an interesting one because it is going from such a dense form, the human body, into something that is so much more refined. The experience that a human has at the point of dying creates the next point of their reality. So, and this is true with everything through the human experience. So everything that you think of, feel, and act upon in one moment as a human affects the next moment that you experience. You may wake up one morning in a terrible mood, and then you get out of bed and bang your toe. Or you may wake up one morning, feel in a good mood, and feel that the rest of that day happens to pan out much more to your advantage. This is really because your consciousness is very active in creating the next experience that you have. And this is also the case when you go through the death process. You just move on to another dimensional frequency. Many people, when their body ceases to exist in the human experience, are surrounded by people who love them and they care about. Obviously not in all cases, but this is frequently the way, which is why so many, when they have a near-death experience, are able to experience very joyful, beautiful states and choose whether to continue the death process or whether to come back. But this is also why some who experience near-death experiences come back and report much more stressful or hell-like experiences and dimensions, because a lot depends on the frequency and what was happening in their life in the few moments of, sometimes few weeks, but often the few moments preceding their death. So the experience does continue. It is multidimensional, and there will be aspects of you who have already passed over, aspects of yourself, because the time is not in this long string in the way that you perceive it as a human. All the different experiences that you are having are happening at once. So there can be aspects of your soul that has chosen to move into a higher, more heaven-like frequency that you might perceive as angels, but they are an aspect of you, guiding your life to help to ensure that you then continue on that same trajectory.
If any human would like to have a connection with the Pleiadian or any other ET, can they do so, and how?
Yes, they can do so. The first point really is to make the request that you would like to have this experience. And some do, but some make the request, but still with a lot of fear. So the way to be able to have that connection, we will not make a communication with a being if their vibration is going to reject it, because we're not able to. You cannot draw something in that's of a completely different frequency to you. So as a human, when you're in a lot of fear, you predominantly are in lower states of vibration. So you might ask for that to happen. We know then, or whoever it is that you're trying to communicate and contact with, you have many different origins and connections throughout the cosmos, but they will know that you would like for that experience to happen, but they will wait until your vibration is high enough that you can hold that and have that experience without too much fear. It's the same with the idea of us appearing to you. You might think that you want it and think that you're ready, but we will have a read of the energy as to whether that is going to become a traumatizing experience for a person or something that is uplifting. So if you wish to move yourself into those higher states, then practicing through the astral planes, which you can access through meditation. Some will access it through sleep. There are various ways that you can put your egoic consciousness aside in order to lift yourself to make those kind of connections. See your body rising up towards light and working through the energy of your heart space, which opens you up to many different higher vibrational frequencies. If you go through that intent with love, as you perceive it, love, we mean more as a frequency rather than an emotion, then you will start to send out the message that your frequency is rising in order for that contact to happen. And some it will take more than others. It will depend greatly on what traumas you have, what experiences you've previously had, and how you are able to open yourselves up. There are some who desperately want to have contact and communication, but never seem to really kind of break through and have that experience. And often that is because there is a lot of negative programming, particularly from childhood, about dabbling, or the idea of being open to different spirits or entities that might cause you problems. And we do wish to reassure you here that if you're working through your vibration, working through your heart center, and working to make this contact by lifting your own frequency, you will not have low vibrational entities, which is what you perceive as demonic or harmful, making connection with you, because they're not able to be in that resonance. But it is worth being mindful of the state of mind that you're in before you try and go into a meditation, and not allowing yourself to do anything that might lower your frequency, such as there are certain substances as humans that you might enjoy taking, but they will make you unable to differentiate between benevolent entities and some that may actually be trying to kind of harness your energy in a way that is quite parasitic.
Thank you for joining me. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak and connect with you. And we will bring Jessica back through for you if you are ready. Hello.
Welcome back.
Hi. How was that?
Good. Some people don't believe that you're actually channeling aliens, but channeling demons. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've heard that one, and I've also heard the idea that aliens are demons and demonic entities. A lot of that does come down to your belief system and your worldview. I did a lot of work on myself and on my abilities to connect with different spirits and different entities before I got anywhere near channeling. And the early experiences doing sort of psychic work and more mediumship type stuff, I did encounter lower vibrational energies and entities, and you begin to learn how to recognize that, which was why for several months before I did start to direct voice channel, I had a lot of communication with Kistos, where we were kind of almost having conversations, or I was getting used to his energy to feel that I could fully trust it and that it was something that I could truly connect with in a way that was safe. And you can also, if you do have experiences with beings that are of a lower frequency, you might not know it in the moment, but you will start to see that manifest, in your life, because it will lower your vibration. And if you've done a lot of work in lifting your frequency, then what we perceive as demonic entities, they just can't make that kind of connection with you, because it's the same way as that when you fall out of vibration with a partner, the relationship often fails because you can't be in a hugely contradicting frequency with another thing. It just disappears from your life.
You're going to be involved with an event with Portal to Ascension. Can you tell us about it?
There are a couple of online channeling events, so I don't have all the details on me here. But so Portal to Ascension really work with different channelers and people that gain insight into higher frequencies and higher states of consciousness. And we really kind of work collectively to try and bring that information through so that it can be understood, utilized by anyone who listens to the events. I think one of the events is about ancient mysteries, so we'll be talking about those kind of ancient layers of consciousness, and the other is energetic alchemy, I think, and they're coming up in May, I believe. I've also got something on the 3rd of January with Portal 2. So yeah, Portal to Ascension really works to bring through our connection to the cosmos, our connection to those higher consciousness, in order that we can really start to get that guidance and start to use that for our ascension as humans.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions.
Sure.
How do they do that?
I host fairly regular online channeling events, so you can buy a ticket to that through my website, jessicataylorintuitive.net, and you can email questions through prior to that. And we get through as many questions as we can. There can be a lot of people taking part in these events, so try and get your questions in early. And also I do one-to-one sessions too, which are all bookable through my website too. Do drop me a follow on Instagram. The handle is Jessica Taylor Intuitive, because that's where I will announce any events and when tickets are going on sale for things, and like podcasts and stuff like that too.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do post some of my videos up onto YouTube. I'm not the best at maintaining my YouTube channel. So a lot of the updates I do tend to, a lot of videos I do tend to do on Instagram too. So I put quite a lot of kind of short insights and stuff that comes through from the Pleiadians. If they're bringing something particularly pertinent that's happening on the planet at the moment, then I'll discuss that on there.
Before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
When I channel the Pleiadians, I feel really excited about where we're going. It's very easy to get caught up in the noise of the media, of the news, and the events that are going on our planet. But I really feel that this is a process that is just necessary for our growth so that we can move into that higher frequency. And I think that the future that we're going to experience, even if it sometimes doesn't look like it from, from the sort of matrix perspective, is one that is going to be so much more positive within our lifetimes, and certainly within our children's lifetimes in that future. So I think we're really looking at the precipice of the future human, of the higher states of consciousness, of much more joy, of much more love and compassion. And I think that that's something to get really, really excited about. And if you can allow yourself to step into that excitement and really start to connect with that possibility, then you're much more likely to actually be an active part in materializing that as the outcome.
Jessica, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you very much for having me, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.